So the last two examples dealt with infinite limit problems. Problems where the limit might end up being positive or negative infinity. With match problem 3, now what we're considering is what's happening to the function as x approaches positive infinity or negative infinity. This is exactly the same question as a question that would ask us to determine the end behavior of a function. So end behavior means find the limit as x approaches 0 and x approaches infinity and x approaches negative infinity. So with these types of problems, end behavior problems, there are always two different limit problems that we need to evaluate. The good news is that these are much simpler, much quicker problems to evaluate than the last two examples. So what we're considering is the limit as x approaches infinity of negative 4x to the fourth plus 2x cubed plus 3x. So to evaluate a problem like this, all we have to worry about looking at is the leading term. So whichever term has the highest degree for its exponent. The reason is, as x gets significantly large, the entire function really just starts to behave like this part of the function. This term takes over everything when x is significantly large. Even though 2x cubed plus 3x can be big numbers, this part is increasing so much faster, it controls the entire function once we get to these extreme values. So we can drop out everything but that leading term, and then just consider what happens as x goes to infinity. Well, in this case, we're plugging in larger and larger positive values for x, raising it to the fourth power. So x to the fourth power is headed to infinity, but then we're multiplying that by negative 4. So our negative times our really large positive ends up giving us negative infinity. And that's it. To consider the limit as x approaches negative infinity, we again only have to worry about the leading term and think about what's happening. So we're taking negative values, so values that are getting smaller and smaller, negative 10,000, negative 10 billion, negative however large, plugging that into x to the fourth. So any number raised to the fourth power is going to be positive. But then we're multiplying that by a negative. Oops, get rid of that. So our negative times the positive is again going to end up being negative infinity. So you could also see this type of behavior if you plugged negative 4x to the fourth into your graphing calculator. But again, we run into some of those issues with your viewing window being incorrect if you don't get the full picture. It's a little bit better for these types of problems to just think through what's happening. We're taking a really large positive number, multiplying it by a negative number, so we're getting closer and closer and closer to negative infinity.